Throughout this lesson, we're going to implement 4 versions of a class called account that represents a simple bank account. And as we build up that class over the several examples, we'll eventually get to the point where an account object represents both an account holder's name and balance, as well as methods that enable us to manipulate the name and the balance for a particular account as well. And before we start looking at our new account class, which we'll do starting in the next video, I'm going to test drive this application and show you how we interact with a new object of the class called account. So let me go ahead first and run this program. And when I run it, we can see that it displays initial name is followed by nothing because we have not yet placed a name into the account object. Then the program asks us to enter the name. So let's say we type Jane Green just for argument's sake and press enter. And now we can see that our My Account object has a name, which is Jane Green. So that's just demonstrating that we did indeed place a name into the account object. So let's see how we produced that output. Now, the account test class contains only a main method, just like all of the examples that you saw in the preceding lesson. And the main method is simply going to say what this program should do. And the first thing it's going to do is create a new object of the class called account, which is also part of this project. You'll see here that we have 2 separate .cs files, one for the account test class that we're looking at right now, and one for the account class that we'll look at starting in the next video. Now, at the end of this series of videos for the first example, I will then show you how to create a project that contains multiple classes. So here in the main method, we start by declaring a variable called myAccount of type account, and notice the naming convention with a lowercase first letter and an uppercase first letter on the second word in the variable name. That's the so-called camel case naming convention. And the type of this variable is account, which is the new type that we're going to create in the account.cs file, and we'll look at that starting in the next video. What you see to the right of the equal sign here is a so-called object creation expression. This creates memory for an object of the type account that's specified to the right of the new operator. And the parentheses are required. That's a call to what's known as the object's constructor. Every single object you create gets a constructor call, and the purpose of that is to initialize the object before it gets used. In this case, we are calling a constructor that takes no arguments, and therefore whatever initialization is performed for that new account object is simply going to be the default for that data type. And we'll talk more about that as we look at class account starting with the next video. So we create our account object. The new operator then gives us back basically the location of that object in memory as what we call a reference in C#, and that reference gets stored into the myAccount variable that we're declaring here at line 10. Now at line 13, we're going to start interacting with that object, and we're doing so in the context here of a string interpolation expression. Here is the key part of that expression, the call to the getName method of the myAccount object. So when we use myAccount followed by a dot, that tells C# that we want to interact with that object. This is the so-called member access operator. And getName is the name of a method that we are going to define for the account class that says give back to the caller the name stored within that myAccount object. So every single account object we create is going to have its own name, just like every single bank account in a real bank has its own account holder with their own name. So initially, we haven't yet placed a name into the account object, which is why when we displayed initial name is, we saw nothing to the right of the colon. So what's coming back here is the string that is currently in existence inside the account object, and in fact that value is what we call null, which I'll talk more about in a subsequent video. A string variable that's not initialized has the value null by default. So next we're going to place a name into the string, into the account object, excuse me. We prompt the user to enter a name, and just as we did in the preceding lesson, we read a line of text from the console window. ReadLine gives us back a reference to a string, which we then store here in a variable of type string, and that type is a keyword in the C# language, but you'll notice when I hover over it, it actually represents the class system.string from the .NET framework. So the string keyword in C# is a one-for-one match with the string class in the .NET framework. Next, at line 18, we take the name, which is a reference to the string object that we just entered. In our case, we typed in Jane Green in the sample execution, and we place that into the myAccount object by passing it as an argument to the method setName. So myAccount has a setName method that is able to receive a string, in this case the name, and do something with it. We're going to store the value into the myAccount object. Then, to prove that it got stored, we're going to ask the myAccount object once again to give us its name, and in this case the string returned by getName will be inserted into this string interpolation expression, and the value will then be displayed, as you can see in the last line of the output here. So now we've test-driven this account class, and starting in the next video, we're going to show you how we defined that class.